If you are a real estate agent and you are tired of cold calling, door knocking, paying for ads that flat out don't work, or just tired of not knowing how to generate leads, then this is the channel for you. We are 4 rockstar agents who have come together to help fellow agents achieve financial freedom as well as location and time freedom. My name is Andy Hollis, along with my partners Aileen Fountain, David Doran, and Tim Hollenden. Together, we have over 50 plus years experience and knowledge in the real estate and sales and training industry, and we are hoping to pass that knowledge on to you. So let's get started.
Good afternoon and good morning, depending what part of the country you're tuning in. So we have had an eventful 72 hours in real estate world. Lots of misinformation by the mainstream media that is disappointing, but this is why we're here. We're here to educate, empower. We have a noble profession. We help between 4 to 7 million families find their place to put their head at night. And we are that Sherpa that guides them through this process, and that's not going to change. The rules of engagement might change a little bit, but that's why we're here. We're going to unpack all of this for you. And then at the end, we'll give you the tools on how to move forward. So I have Holly here, who's the VP of Operations and someone I have the pleasure of working with every day. And I want her to introduce herself and talk about the background, because the one thing I want to make sure you guys understand is Holly and I are one of you. This is how we fed our families. We've been at the kitchen table. We've been in the car. And so all these changes are very personal to us. And that's why we're excited to share with you. So Holly, why don't you kick them off with a little bit about you?
Thanks, Leo. Well, good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Mabry, and VP for Brokerage Ops at EXP. But more than anything, I've been in the business since 1998. I skin my teeth on working with buyers every day, and then working with sellers and sitting at their table and helping them plan for next. The strategies around what that looks like. I've helped co-run a team. I've worked in the REO market and short sales and foreclosures. Gosh, then I've been a designated broker. I've had my broker's license in Arizona since 2001. And I've been an instructor nationally, served as state president, and I am really excited to help guide and be with you all as we go to next, because this is the coolest opportunity to really take care of our buyers and sellers at the next level.
And for the ones who don't know me, I'm Leo Pareja. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer. I've been licensed since I was 19 years old. I sold close to 4,000 homes in that time period. And like Holly, I've done REO, I've done buyers, I've done new construction. I've done it just about everything. And change is constant. Change will always be here, and the professional will rise to the top. So let's jump into it and start unpacking all this for them, Holly.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the settlement, Leo, because this is the big thing. This was the big headlines that hit on Friday for everyone. And so what I loved, go ahead.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it. So the settlement protects 1 million members. So it was very clear who it protected and very notably who it didn't. So the folks not protected are the Home Services of America related companies. We are not part of that. So you as individual agents are actually released from the settlement. We as corporate are still litigating our own stuff, but that was already ongoing and we're well prepared for that. But everyone should, breathe a sigh of relief who's licensed and a dues paying member of NAR. And we are, by the way, we're going to try to leave as much time for Q&A. We're going to answer as many questions as possible. And just so you know, this presentation is what your COEs are going to have. It's what your brokers are going to have. And me, Michael, Glenn, Lauren, Holly, all of the folks in leadership who have licenses and live and breathe this stuff, we're excited to join you at your calls with your organizations in your communities as many times as you need us, because we're going to do this together. So Absolutely. The next part of folks that this releases are the offices, directors, and other participants in NAR activities. So as Holly mentioned, she's a past president. I was actually a member of the NAR board while I served as NAR's national president. So all the folks who are affiliated are also released. Nothing else to unpack there, really. The practices change will be implemented mid-July, right? So 2 things to think about. The July date is the one that we're all just going to mobilize and start rolling out stuff as soon as this week and next week and as soon as it becomes available. But let me not forget to point out, the judge needs to ratify the settlement and the DOJ can comment. So what's most likely going to happen is lots of opinions. I got a lot of emails from you guys over the weekend. That email came from my personal email. So what's going to happen with the VA? What's going to happen with FHA? We're going to find out together and very quickly, and we're going to operationalize it. I have a phone call into the director of the VA, who I happen to know, but his phone's been off, and I'm sure it's for a pretty good reason this morning. So as you know, we'll implement policy, but we'll be watching very carefully all the moving pieces. So next point, if you want to take it, Holly, that's the big headline.
Yeah, so NAR is going to pay $418 million. That's going to be spread over 4 years. And I know there have been a lot of folks who are like, what does this look like? We're going to find out more together. And really, this is a boon to wrap all of the lawsuits that were seller lawsuits together. And that way, we're all released in that respect. Now, the only lawsuits not released are anything filed by buyers as plaintiffs. And so those are still going to be litigated. Those are still going to be looked at. Right now, it's a little bit interesting the way the law reads. And so we're going to be having more information in your broker meetings and stand-ups to make sure that you're fully aware of what this means buyer-wise. But seller, this is the release for the big sellers across the 3 main lawsuits and all the copycats.
All right, well, let's jump into what happens. This is where the meat and potatoes, and we'll spend most of the time talking. And we structure this in a conversation of what currently happens. So before March 15th and after March 15th. So what's been going on for as long as most of us been practiced? You know, when I got my license and I entered a listing into the MLS, we understood, blanket offer of compensation. It was unilateral. It was one of the pillars of cooperation as it was taught to us. And if for any reason there was an argument, you take it to arbitration and you wouldn't even, mess with the transaction because that was a promise to you. That is being deleted from the MLS fields. So we no longer will have a blanket unilateral office of compensation that prior to that date could not be changed. So Holly, that's the biggest change we've seen in this settlement.
Absolutely. And before everybody gets a little bit concerned, I want to go back to 1996. And in 1996, we all worked for the seller. We had sub-agency. And sub-agency went away because we really wanted to see more proactivity. And actually, the DOJ wanted to see more buyer representation. So there's always been a consistent evolution in our industry of how do we better take care of clients and serve them at a higher level with fiduciary duties. And that's what came in 1996. Now, speaking of fiduciary duties, that agency relationship that we have in almost all of our states, mostly we just had to have that relationship and that designation of the client that, hey, Holly's going to work for me as my buyer's agent. Well, now going forward, before any showings, we're going to have to actually have an employment agreement as well as agency. So that buyer broker agreement becomes really important. We're going to talk more about that here in just a moment.
Yeah. So most states only required agency disclosures to represent a buyer. So, one of the things we'll talk about in the next slides is, the buyer employment relationship, not the agency relationship, was very much implied and assumed versus now it will be definitively spelled out. Let's go on to the next one.
Yeah, so offer of limited or dual agency. So think of it this way. Prior to Friday, if you were having an open house, somebody walked in and said, oh my gosh, I have to buy this house. You might go ahead and offer them compensate or offer them agency and they get paid that way. Going forward, we may be looking at how we do open houses differently and offer representation to a buyer. Also, sign calls as a listing agent. I may strategize slightly differently how I'm going to service my sellers in making sure their property is available. But am I going to represent that buyer? Is it only going to be a one-time? So there's lots of opportunities in discussion in how we move forward. And I'm really excited because now we get to go deeper in what that looks like on behalf of the client, what my fee for service is going to be, and what I'm willing to do for just anybody off the street versus somebody I've been in a long-term relationship with, like my seller.
Absolutely. And again, this is news to all of us. And Holly and I have already discussed the buyer representation agreements we're going to be creating and rolling out to you guys in a matter of weeks. And there'll probably be variations, right? If that sign call comes in and it's that one property for that one day, it could be a very limited engagement. So it's non-confrontational, like a first date, right? And then once you've had that opportunity to show your value, to meet with them, to do your buyer presentation, to explain the services they engage in, they could enter a more longer term exclusive one if that's what you choose to do.
I think that's what's so exciting is previously we maybe didn't get to explain what we did in the transaction or how we would take care of a client. And that was pre-Friday. What I love is where we're headed. And let's take a look at these because updated and our practices moving forward. Some of these you may want to start to embrace or think about in your business today, but some of them will not be enacted until after the judge ratifies and the DOJ has commented and in place into July. So first and foremost, there will be no offer of compensation in the multiple listing service come mid-July. We all need to be prepared for it. And the offer of compensation could already go to zero. That was a rule change by the National Association last October, but now it will be completely eliminated. And that's an important distinction as we go forward.
Now, this is the part that I had the most questions about during the weekend because it was part of the settlement. So sellers may offer concessions via the MLS that could be used and included for buyer broker compensation. So that feels confusing, right? Like we're moving it from one line to the other. So the biggest shift that you guys need to take away from this is one was a unilateral offer of compensation that was guaranteed and it was there. Now a seller at the listing appointment can make the decision that we will credit X percent number of dollars to be used as buyer concessions. That could be used for closing costs. It could be used to buy down points in this interest rate environment we're in, or it could be used to compensate the buyer's representation agreement as a credit. So the example that we were kind of wordsmithing that makes a lot of sense is today, you could show a property that says $5,000 flooring credit because the dogs tore up the floor and they didn't want to deal with it prior to listing. And so it's advertised. But what happens in practice? If the agent writes up that offer and does not ask for that $5,000 credit and that contract gets ratified, in the world of real estate, we operate by what's called statute of frauds. It's a very specific definition for real estate contracts where in the greater society in the US, there are many states and many forms of oral agreements that are enforceable. Real estate specifically is one where it is not. I feel like it's a baptism by fire initiation of almost all realtors when you forget to check off that washer and dryer and we buy one the very first couple of times we're writing a buyer agreement. This will be that. Any credit advertised as a concession has to be part of the negotiation. And let me give you some more examples. If a property is listed for $1 million and someone offers $950 and there was an advertised credit, there's no assumption that that will be part of the contract. In the current form of the world, if it's marketed at $1 million and you offer $950 and the offer of compensation is 2.5, 2.753, whatever it is, that percentage is tied to that contract and it can't be negotiated. That's the crux of what they're trying to get at here. It must be passed into the contract, must be subject to open negotiations. So think about that. Any credit that will be used for the buyer commission can be pen stroked and negotiated back and forth. And this is another huge one. The buyer agent may not be paid more than the pre-negotiated amount of the buyer broker agreement. So if your buyer broker agreement said 2.5 and the seller was advertising 3, you may not receive more than that number. That is a very, very big distinction. Sorry.
And it's really important. No, not at all. I think what becomes so important here is setting your value up front. If you go in and say, hey, I'm only going to get paid $1 and suddenly there's $10,000 on the line, guess what you're walking away with? $1. So that's why right now, as we prepare for July, we're going to be working with you and for you in building out better buyer broker presentations. We're going to be upgrading the buyer broker agreement so you've got quick use of that from EXP. And also, we're going to be looking at other shareables so you can educate clients that maybe haven't met you yet and maybe want to work for you or with you. And so those are opportunities. Now, this is the other key thing. And this is already a rule, but there was a huge distinction that came across in the settlement as proposed. Right now, I can't advertise my services for free. That's already been a rule. But the key change there is a lot of buyers agents said, hey, I'll work for free, knowing they got paid by the seller. That's no longer the case. You cannot get compensation from anywhere if you've advertised for free. So as you look at your marketing, as you look at your listing presentation, your buyer presentation, what you do if a seller then becomes a buyer, all of those fees for service that you have as part of your business plan, it's a good time to take a look at them and what is next for you.
So the one that Holly just touched on is really important because, it was a rule already, but I think a lot of conversations or implied representations were made of, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay out of pocket. I'm taken care of, right? That single statement is no longer valid because it's tied to the next one. A buyer broker has to negotiate the service fee prior to the showing of the property, right? That's the biggest distinction. We have a sentence for you a little further down of how you need to think about this and always remember it. But, I was on the phone with Holly and Jim Bramble, our general counsel, and several outside lawyers all over the weekend because, the other thing, we will see the final versions as this progresses. But my agent hat came on. I said, what if I said, okay, you guarantee me a $5,000 retainer, but if I can negotiate up to 3%, I get the difference? No, you can't do that. There is no whatever the seller is willing to pay. The fee has to be agreed upon. But the question I asked directly to several attorneys was, if I agree to, let's say, 2.5, and there are concessions for closing costs and credits for a washer dryer or any of those things, may I reduce my agreed upon fee? And the answer is yes. You can go down on your fee. You just can't go up on your fee. So remember that.
And then when you start to look at the unilateral offer of compensation, this is where your listing agent hat needs to come on and you're having great conversations with your sellers as these new rules go into effect. Basically, when you look at this, the unilateral offer of compensation is going to go away. Sellers may negotiate buyer to buyer. So for instance, if I'm a listing agent and I've got Leo on the other side and I have such a great relationship with Leo, I know that he closes more deals than anybody else in our market as a buyer's agent. And when I get an offer, we are most likely to close. The seller may say, hey, this agent in concessions is asking for X amount that's higher than what we just agreed upon for somebody who was not as reputable, maybe had more challenges. Should we give them the higher? And that becomes a negotiating strategy. If I've got a seller who's trying to get across the finish line faster, I may recommend or show them, hey, this agent can actually get the deal done representing this buyer, whereas we may have more challenges with another. So if you start to think about your strategy in the marketplace, relationships matter. How you show up in every single deal. Are you the most dependable to get it done? Do you give good advice? How are you in working and negotiating? Do you know your contract? All of those things make a difference in not just your buyer representation, but how you show up in that messy in the middle in negotiations, and it can make all the difference in the world.
100%.
Yeah, it's exciting as we go forward. So let's give you some tactile tools. We know that the seller's offer of compensation is going to be eliminated in the multiple listing, and we're already seeing zero. We wanted to give you a clause that you can use immediately today. And I will share with you all, I've been using this clause for quite a while, about 15 years, going through the short sale market and REO where they were cash poor transactions. Buyers couldn't pay me. There wasn't much offered. And so I was inserting this clause into my contracts and it works really well. So seller to credit buyer X amount at close of escrow to satisfy buyer's contractual agreement with buyer broker. Now, the key to this, you must have not just a buyer agency agreement, but a true buyer broker agreement to get this paid. We've not had any issues with FHA. We've not had any issues with conventional or USDA. VA, we understand is different because whatever is offered in MLS is what is allowed to be paid. As Leo said, he's got to call in to the head of the Veterans Administration. We do anticipate rule changes, and we'll be bringing those to you as we are aware of them.
And as just in time, I was wordsmithing with Ed Zorn of CRMLS this morning, and he even suggested a language that says seller to credit EXP Realty X percentage with successful closing, because we think we could make the argument under VA right now, because historically they allow buyer brokerage, which again is not fixed. It could be as little as 1.5%, 1%, 2%, 2.5%, 3%, 4%, right? And under the current rules of VA, I would make an argument to an underwriter that satisfies it right now.
So lots to come, but we wanted to give you tactile go started this afternoon as we see these changes start to flesh out across the board. So this is our big takeaway, Leo.
Yes, this is the mantra, everybody. If you remember only one thing Holly and I said today, this is it. Treat your buyers like you treat your sellers. Think about it. When you meet with a seller, mostly because of the rules that involve a listing agreement, you don't just kind of meet a seller and go, yeah, let me see what I can do. And there's no agreement in place and there's no expectations of I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Like sellers, you have a presentation. You are typically competing with multiple people. You sell on value. You explain your services and why one company charges less and does less and one does more and you get more. That is the way of the world now. You treat your buyers just like you do a seller. You get a consultation, you pitch, and you compete for the value you will deliver for the fee you're willing to accept. So again, one takeaway today is you now put on your listing agent hat when you meet with a buyer and you treat them the same way. So we will be delivering all the assets that you will need in order to do this. Do not worry. We are feverishly working on delivering in days and weeks, not months. But that's the one takeaway. 190 pages, tens of hours of lawyers. That's what you need to take away from this.
Yeah, and think it's a consultation and a strategy. When you think of how people need to buy a home in this market, it takes great strategy. Interest rates are higher, home inspections, loans, all of those things. How are people going to buy? So why not strategize with that buyer? They need your help more than ever. And quite frankly, so does the seller. So this is a great opportunity to step forward and embrace what's next. So we wanted to give you some takeaways. What can you do today? And let's start with working with sellers, Leo.
Yeah, so this is going to happen today. I opened up by saying I'm actually super disappointed with the amount of clickbait nonsense headlines. The death of the 6%. First of all, the average commission in this country has been 5% for the last couple of years, so not even close to 6%. That agency goes away, buyers agents disappear. There's a whole lot of misinformation. So your very first thing today is to be knowledgeable and be well prepared to explain this. This will be on YouTube, so I encourage you to go back, listen. If you're one of our agents, if you emailed me over the weekend, I probably responded, right? There was a lot of engagement. We're all here. If you're at EXP in workplace, you can message any one of us. That's actually one of the beautiful things about our flat organization. You message Glenn, you message Michael, you message Carolyn, you message Holly, you get us, right? And most of our cell phones are in there. So this is what needs to happen today. You need to combat the misinformation that's out there. How does compensation work to a buyer broker? So the very first thing I would do on a listing appointment, I've already had agents call me over the weekend to say, I'm going on a listing presentation, or I took a listing last week and the sellers are saying, I'm not paying that. CNN said I don't have to pay that anymore. So information is king and you guys need to be able to articulate it. So the first thing, explain the unilateral offer of compensation that currently exists. And if you were to take a listing today and they don't want to offer it, you just put in 0, which according to NAR, that it's already in effect. And we can operate with the rules of July today if your seller chooses to. Do not lose a piece of business because they were misinformed. You are empowered and have all the tools you need to operate as if.
And I think the thing there, right? Like, if you're going to meet with the seller this afternoon, take the EXP rider to the listing addendum, whatever your local listing employment agreement is, in SkySlope, under SkySlope forms, is the EXP rider that already breaks out and gives the seller that opportunity. Hey, do we want to offer buyer compensation? And we've had that for you for, since October. And we're really excited to make sure that we're having these better conversations to put out there. And now going forward, buyers will get to determine, hey, do I want to hire somebody? And if I do, what am I willing to pay them? When you start to sit down with the seller this afternoon, go through, what does it look like in today's market? Are we going to offer compensation? Pull comps in the surrounding area. What is being offered? Does your seller want to compete at that level? Do they want to take a price reduction? It's kind of like, hey, am I going to paint the house and upgrade the flooring and the countertops? Or am I going to take a haircut and not worry about doing those upgrades? Those are all part of your strategies when you think about what's going on in the marketplace, what is important to your seller. It's really critical that we have open conversations with what's next.
Yeah, so Holly touched on something. There's going to be a transition, guys. There's going to be a moment in time where the comps the listing agent used to set that price had an offer of compensation. And I would encourage you, when writing an offer, to show that. Like, hey, you set it at $1 million or $500,000, and all those were paying an average of 2.5%, and you're not offering one. If it's not part of the concessions, you need to make an adjustment for that unilateral offer of compensation. One of the interesting things of the data is that almost all MLSs, going back 90 days, because we have access to nationwide, show that at least 50% of sellers offered concessions across the board. Now, what they used them for varied. It could be a repair credit. It could be closing cost assistance. It could be buy down rates. When the rates spiked up to 8%, we saw a lot of buy down credits. But this is part of the conversation. And then concessions should be part of the pricing conversation going forward. Just like I said, you touched on it with the comps, but you need to educate your seller now, right? Just how that misinformation said this doesn't exist, it's going to happen.
Absolutely. And I think also when you're having conversations with your seller this afternoon, talk about what you're willing to do as far as does your state provide for dual agency? If I get a sign call, do you want me to go out and show to that potential buyer, or should it go to another agent? Or these are conversations we should already be having with our sellers and buyers, but now the emphasis is just a little bit higher and we get to take it to the next level. That's a wonderful opportunity.
But let's unpack that a little further. Again, when we talked about what happened pre-315, it was very kind of assumed and convenient, right? If it was easy, I'd open the door, whatever happened. Now, I'm going to jump down a couple bullet points because I'm touching on it. I fully expect to see dual rate commissions or variable rate commissions, and it depends on the state what they call it. So what does that mean, Leo? Right? That means when I take a listing, I'm going to agree to representation for the seller, X amount. But I'm going to have a conversation with that seller to say, hey, in this new world, we're not offering a buyer compensation. There are going to be a lot of consumers who read the clickbait news that said, I don't want a representation, and they're going to call me. I'm not allowed to unlock that door unless we have an agreement in place. And so if you would prefer that I represent just you and, we're just going to do the ministerial acts to fill in the blank, will you pay me X more for that? Because there is going to now be a world where someone is fully represented or partially represented or not represented at all. And so this is going to be a very important talk track that we will be coaching and teaching and training to on how you can handle those conversations, because I think the biggest hurdle, and guys, there's going to be a transition period. Holly and I were talking about this. Do we see other models popping up of, limited service, flat fee? All kinds of stuff's going to happen, But what happens historically when shifts happen is you have 200, 300, 400 ideas. It happened with the birth of the railroads, and then it consolidates into 2 or 3. What happens is capitalism is efficient. Water finds the lowest point in the room. What works for everybody and is the most accretive thing will happen. And my humble opinion is in 12, 18, 24 months, we'll have a, best practices that we see across the board. And one of the interesting points as I was discussing this with one of the lawyers over the weekend is I said, what's your guess as to what happens in averages? And the interesting response was, we won't see averages probably anymore. We'll see in a market where there's no inventory and there's 17 offers, there will be a behavior we see. We will see a balanced market with 2 to 3 months of inventory, which, that concept doesn't, sound familiar anymore. We haven't seen a balanced market in a good while. And then a lot of you on this have never seen a buyer's market. Holly and I sold homes when there was 18 months of inventory. There was once upon a time where out of 10 houses on one side of the street, I had 5 of the listings for Fannie and Freddie, right? So that will be a different behavior. You will incentivize the behavior that you need to stimulate commerce, right? At the end of the day, this is pure and free capitalism. And I truly think that that's one of the beautiful things about what we do. I think the folks who deliver value and can articulate it and build systems will actually thrive through this. Sorry, I skipped one bullet point I want to make sure.
Sure.
Back to that listing appointment this afternoon. I told you guys I was jazzed up when I got here. I didn't sleep much because I was so excited to share some of this stuff. It's going to become a very serious education process for your seller. If you're selling a home in the FHA, VA limits in your county, which you better know, you need to explain that there are things that are different than for a conventional buyer outside of that range, right? So we will give you all the data so you're the expert, but you just will have to start getting into the practice of communicating these different nuances, because what you don't want is halfway through the transaction, someone's got one way of looking at the world and we could have the deal fall apart. So dual rate commissions and variable rate commissions are going to be a thing. Get really, really clear understanding. What do we do with a buyer, right? They're I guarantee you starting tomorrow. I had an email from an agent who said over the weekend they had buyers who forwarded them headlines go, I'm not paying you anything. I'm not going to pay you, right? In the current world, that's still not an issue because most of the listings have an offer of compensation, but there's a lot of misinformation. So you have to be the Sherpa. You have to be the agent, the expert that guides them up the mountain and protects them from the perils they're not aware of. And update your listing packets, menus of services, fees for services, and don't be surprised if we see a proliferation of people experimenting. Flat fee, a fee for opening a door. I'm fully expecting to see a whole lot of creativity till we find, again, and just like today, there are, high-end boutiques, full service, limited service for all experiences across society today.
I think that's the key is when you know who you are and how you want to run your business and you know your numbers, you can adjust very easily in this market. And that would be my challenge to all of you watching is look at your numbers, look at how you want to make pivots. What kind of agent do you want to be known for in the marketplace? And start articulating that. Start articulating what it looks like to work with you, what you bring to the table, and why it's so fantastic. You can sell on value, you can sell on price. As Leo said, capitalism drives, and this is a great opportunity. Now let's talk about buyers, because this is where I also get really excited, because I want you to start thinking about your buyers just slightly differently. How many of you are buyer agents and the phone rings and you're gone, right? Like you're out and you're opening doors and you have that passion to meet people and help them find their next, place to make memories. Well, I want you to think about what that looks like when a buyer calls and how you have that conversation, because now is a great time to educate them beyond the headlines, but also what is coming soon. If you've got buyers that are not quite ready to buy, but they're thinking about it maybe later this summer, great. Those folks are in transition, and set them for success. So if you're thinking of your social media, and I'm thinking of quick hit reels and quick quick hit TikToks, if you will. Great. Talk about 3 things buyers should know in the market right now. Talk about 1 question to ask every agent that you're going to go interview. Encourage people to dig in and understand more about what makes their market work. Because the more you're that kind of community resource and you're leading with value, the more trusted you become and the more people pivot and want to ask and work with you. And that's the key in all of this. We're going to be, as a company, driving as much information for you to leverage and use. We're going to help you update your buyer packet and so forth. But what does it mean to show your value? Can I find it on your website or your video blog? Can I find it in your social media? And if not yet, we're going to be creating those things for you to help in a social media package, all of it, to really explain to buyers what's new and what's next. And that becomes really, really important to all of us.
And there's folks on here who are probably stressed out because a good portion of their business is lead gen from the internet, right? And what we've been trained to do over the last couple of years as those lead sources grew was speed to lead and appointment at the property to build rapport, right? So I'm talking to a very specific group of you right now. You will have to modify that. We will be rolling out a buyer representation that's 1 page. That's the goal, right? It's like, hey, this is just for this property and it could be this price. But if, we get to a consultation and we go have a cup of coffee and I get to do the full presentation, it could be something else. One could lead to the other. And again, we will see the most creative, smartest folks. One of the things that I talk about anytime I'm in front of you guys, we are the #1 company by agent count, but more importantly, we're the #1 company by transaction count. No other company in this country serves more families than we do. And so we have the opportunity to continue to serve as many families as we do. And the folks who are most educated and can be the calming voice through all this will win.
So let's talk. You talked about the lead gen folks. I want to talk to our brand new agents out there who maybe are a little bit nervous. Being a brand new agent and with a company like ours, in the stats that Leo just shared, those are stats, they belong to you. And those are things that I want you to capitalize on in speaking in your local marketplace. Who better to support you through this transition than a company like ours? One of my favorite things as a brand new agent, I lived with my grandmother. I was fresh out of college, and I had to look up the word escrow. I didn't know what it meant. And so as a result, it was like, how do I do this? Well, that year I sold more homes. I was one of the top people in my company, my little office, because what I did is I turned around and I said, all of these people, and I added up, how many people had been in the business for a while. All of these people are behind me and helping me go forward. And I want you to do that with EXP. I want that part of your buyer presentation. I want that part of your seller presentation. And I want you talking about what's great about your affiliation here, because that makes the difference. And so as you start to look at updating your resume and stats with key terms, like, how much money have you saved your clients on average in every negotiation? How many contracts did you have to write to get them to close? Especially for those of you who've been working in this market for the last year, 18 months. Man, were you one of those people that were able to close the gap quickly? That's huge. What does that look like? What's in it for the buyer in hiring you? And get that information out. The more we can do, that will make a difference in why buyers hire you. Because we already know buyers typically only interview one agent. Why not show them why they should ask multiple agents and they always come back? One of my favorite scripts is, hey, until you have chosen your agent, please know anything you say can be used against you in a negotiation. When you're ready, I'll be here to serve. And those kinds of scripts go quick and people go, wait a minute. What do you mean if I say something, it could be used against me in a negotiation? You walk into an open house, you say you just won a bunch of money or you got left a bunch of money. As a listing agent, I just heard that we can get full price. As a buyer's agent, I know how to protect you before we go into that open house. So those are things to think about as we go forward.
Holly, let's jump into what happens next. I want to leave at least 5 or 10 minutes for Q&A.
Yep, absolutely.
So what happens next? Updates to your realtor forms locally are coming fast and furious. Updates to your MLS rules and forms are coming fast and furious. So, we have a reputation for not reading all of our emails because we're all out in the field. Read everything your association sends you, your MLS sends you, and please, that we send you. We fully expect updates to FHA and VA borrowers as they will be impacted. And it could be swift or it could be language, just like I described earlier. Updates to the relocation market, pending those clients have buyers of representation. So for most of you that don't do relo, the relo fees are typically covered by the employer on the seller side. So my guess, and again, we're 76 hours into the news breaking, is that may happen on the buy side as well. Anything you want to touch on there?
No, I think those are huge industry changes. We'll be watching and educating, but let's talk about what you can expect from EXP. And we're really passionate about this.
Yeah, in the coming weeks, we will be updating the listing rider addendum for all the language needed to comply with the settlement. So as Holly said, as of October, as soon as the settlement, the lawsuit went the specific way, we already did that, but we're going to make sure it's fully adapted to the specifics of this settlement. We will be creating the buyer broker agreements. We will creating multiple flavors of them because we are now in a brave new world that will mirror a lot of the listing world. So, most of us operate with exclusive listing agreements, but there's open listing agreements. And I know several of you use them very expertly in the investor range and the cash buyer range. So we will be mirroring that in the buyer community as soon as possible. Updates to the EXP Marketing Center. We will be giving you the buyer kit, verbalizing the value proposition. And as Holly said, now more than ever, use our numbers as a huge strength for you new agents. I got emails from you guys who said, hey, I'm only 2 years in the business. I am terrified right now. I'm not sure how I'm going to feed my family. We got you. We are built for this. We are prepared for this.
And the same with the seller presentation. We're going to be doing updates to the seller presentation. You're going to see many of those things start to roll out as soon as later this week. But every week, if you tune into the Big Agent meeting on Friday mornings, we're going to be having updates of what has changed coming soon. Also, your state broker meetings, your state broker newsletters. We're going to be rolling out as much as we can to make you the most prepared agents in this space to take care of our clients at the highest level.
All right.
And this is where I get excited because Leo, this has been a passion for you to think ahead. And now here we are, and we're going forward even faster.
Yeah. So this is something I'm obsessed with since June of 22, right? The second I saw this trial not get dismissed, I knew we needed additional tools in our tool belt. And we want to provide you as many possible ways to create inventory and serve the sellers the way they want to be served and met. So, as we dove through the settlement, we will be actually modifying this where we think we actually just created even more opportunities to not only be completely compliant with all of what the DOJ and NAR want, but also give you the tools to compete and stand out even more. So we can leave this one up for a little bit, as we can leave this one up the entire time, but I wanted to leave at least 10, 15 minutes, which I think we managed to do. So we're ready for Q&A, Randy, if you want to start just throwing them in the chat. I'll just jump right into the elephant in the room, which was the number one question I got via email over the weekend, which is, are we leaving NAR? Can I leave NAR? And the answer is, we're going to do what's best for you and us, right? That is our number one priority. We are here to serve you. We've seen a lot of companies say, we're pulling out of NAR asterisks where possible and applicable. And honestly, frankly, I'm going to call that lip service because operationally, in most markets, you cannot participate in both the MLS and access to forms. So I'll give you a clear example. In California, you do not have to be a member of California Association of Realtors to join CRMLS. You could be a non-member participant, but to then have access to the forms, you need to then pay $1,500 a year, right? So, we will do what's in your best interest and our best interest. And the release actually came from your membership dues. So this is something we'll be watching on a super regular basis. And just stay tuned is my answer to that. So as of right now, it is very useful for operating, access to the MLS and getting the forms. The moment it does not, I would say it's up for review.
I think the other option is EXP, what I appreciate is always a personal choice, how you run your business, the things you do. And so if you feel passionately about not wanting to be a member of the National Association, okay. We do have another brokerage, which is EXP Commercial, that if you choose to change to, we can make that happen. Just reach out to your state broker and we can support you as needed. But again, no forms. And so it's a bit more costly on that end.
Yeah, so what does that mean? I don't know if any of you have done a commercial deal before. Typically, there is an outside attorney fee to review the contracts and to create them and to prep them. So again, we actually can do that. You could be part of EXP Commercial and actually write residential contracts, but you won't have access to the MLS in the vast majority of them. Off the top of my head, and I could be wrong here, so feel free to correct me or somebody probably will in the comments. California and Colorado are the only two states that I'm aware of that allow that. There could be others. And again, guys, the world is changing minute by minute. We don't know what it'll look like in 30, 60, 90, 120 days. And as I said, we reserve the right to review and change our mind.
I love this question. Why would a buyer now want to work with an agent? Let's assume the seller is still willing to pay the buyer agent commission. Can the agreed upon amount be paid from the seller side as current, or can it only be paid by a concession? So there's a couple of questions in here, Leo, to unpack.
Yeah, you want to take it? I got lots of opinions, but go ahead and take it real quick.
So why would a buyer now want to work with an agent? Honestly, at the end of the day, this is one of the most complex transactions somebody will ever take on in their life. It's super easy to go to Zillow or realtor.com and search for properties. It's super easy to think what it might be worth. It's not super easy to know this home inspector is better than that. I also need to be paired with this lender, how to advocate for in an appraisal, right? Also, what concessions should I be asking for in the contract? What else should I be aware of that is going on? Gosh, are there issues with drinking water? Is there issues with flood zone? Do we have airport noise? All of those things that because you work closely in a community that you know innately to either make disclosure, help find the right information, and guide that buyer through the most complex transaction. Also, buyers are continuing to live their lives. They've got to get the kids to school. They've got work issues. Maybe they're taking care of their families and parents. Their mind is not on the transaction 24/7, but yours is as the professional. And that's the opportunity to be hired.
So said differently, I always say this to folks. Real estate is the single largest investment the average American family makes. It happens on average 3 times. It's infrequent. So it used to be 7, it's moving towards 9-year average in between transactions. And it is highly emotional. Half of my career, I said our job is to keep the parties from suing each other, right? The rates of litigation, this is a statistical fact, for FSBOs that end in litigation versus represented parties is staggering. The 2 stats that I would be very familiar with, and again, we will be giving all of this to you, is FSBOs typically sell for less than represented parties because there's no experts helping negotiate. And I want to say it's like 3 or 4x times the percentage that they end in litigation. So that question really digs at what is your value prop? How are you representing value? And again, it could be commoditized, which I fully expect to see some people do. And there'll be 2 sides to the pendulum. I fully expect to see people continue to get the same type of percentages they've been experiencing if they can articulate the value proposition and the buyers can see the value in it. So again, I'm looking off to the side so I can get to as many of these as possible. Does the credit from the seller to the buyer paragraph include the listing agreement or that's no longer part of the transaction? So in the listing agreement, you can put in there that the seller's offering a concession. But again, the distinction here, it's an offer of a credit is not guaranteed unless fully negotiated into the contract. That's the biggest distinction. I saw one a second ago. Does this affect rentals? It does. It does. It did not specify one or the other. So the offer of compensation is being deleted. Unilateral offer of compensation. Concession is a separate word.
I think we've got a question specifically to the state of Wisconsin that doesn't require buyer agency. That's great. Buyer agency may not be required because everybody's a sub-agent of the seller, but in order to get paid and guaranteed as a door opener, you will have to go down this path. So likely we're to see legislation in your state. There's going to be more that I know your state brokers are going to be all over. So please keep plugging in with them as we go forward, because they're going to be bringing you the latest and greatest from your state association as well as the state legislature.
So let me also remind you that none of this is final. None of this is final. The judge has not ratified this. The DOJ has not opined. And as we move towards that, we could see extensions, we could see additions, we could see amendments. So, you know, as we get towards the finale and the implementation, there could be very specific things that could happen. All right, let me just.
With regard to new construction, I'm going to reserve the phrase "it depends." If it is something that is, again, this is coming out of NAR Settlement with the Department of Justice and the Realtor organization specifically. So if you had listings that were on the multiple listing, if you were taking listings representing a seller, yes, it absolutely impacts. If you were going to a new home subdivision, we'll see. And we'll have more information as things kind of unfold and what to expect.
Yeah, but let's touch on that, because I live in Miami, and you know, we have big towers that offer 5 and 6% during the pre-construction phase. I actually asked an attorney that over the weekend, because that's a very real thing. And what he said is, if you represent, like, and again, in my market, we have some amazing teams with us that actually do a lot to be able to be even eligible for that. What do I mean by that? They actually go to Latin America and Eastern Europe and Dubai, and they go to these countries where the, you know, affluent folks want to get their money into the US market. And depending on geopolitics, that changes every 6 months, right? So like, if you have a pre-construction tower to sell in Miami and you're willing to pay these very sophisticated buyer brokers to sell out 100 units so you could get your first release on your construction at pre-construction, if you are catering to those people, you better put in that buyer representation 6%, 5%, whatever is being offered, because that's very purposeful. You're representing that very specific party for that very specific product, and you're doing typically a very high value activity to do that. So excellent question.
So if the commission's not coming out of the seller's profit, is the buyer going to have to pay cash? Potentially, the buyer may be showing up to pay in multiple different ways. They may show up with cash at closing. They may do a line of credit. They may put it on a credit card. There are a lot of things that may be in flux as we go forward in how the buyer chooses to pay their agent if they're not getting a concession from the seller, or if the seller opts not to.
So I got a question that said, hey, I can't show a property under another agent's client anymore. How soon should I expect a new listing contract? What are the guidance? So remember, the rule change does not go into effect till mid-July. We will be getting you everything you need in a matter of days and weeks. And we will then be spending countless hours training you, answering questions, daily stand-ups. We've already operationalized across all the markets with the COEs and the brokers. And Holly and I, Glenn, Michael, I'm, you know, volunteering everyone to be there to answer these questions, because don't forget this part. We're all in this at the exact same time. There is not a single competitor that has more information than you do right now. We all found out about it at the exact same time. We're all making our own internal analysis, which could shift as we get more information. And like I said earlier, I fully expect to see a whole lot of creativity come July, going into December of next year. And once we see a pattern, and again, it's not us, it's capitalism, it's efficient markets, it's what happens in a free enterprising society. We will start seeing the winning models.
I think it definitely comes down to you as an agent being nimble. And Glenn said it so well in his video message to all of us this weekend. Stay nimble, stay positive, and keep looking forward, because it makes all the difference in the world. And so let's talk about teams, Leo, because we've got a lot of teams out there that maybe have buyers agents and so forth. We are looking at what this does, what adjustments and best practices we might see for teams and strategies out of that, so we can help you prepare and adjust maybe what's next for your teams. And so could it be team agreements, how you show up, how you take listings, all of that. Working with Zillow, we are taking that all under advisement so we can help you chart the path forward.
And let me address the buyer referrals from internet companies, right? Because and Holly and I are the ones who sign those and review those. So the way your current agreements are is they get a referral fee on whatever buyer broker commission is earned. So by the current agreements that are in place, nothing changes. Nothing changes. Whatever you manage to negotiate, up or down, is what they participate in. So, you can take a deep breath, because actually we don't have to put any more paperwork. And guess what? I was on the phone with all of them this weekend too. So that's their expectation. As we get new information, we'll have new information, and we will be nimble and adjust. But again, we're all making this, implementation and shift in real time.
As we go forward, places for you to keep a watch. Definitely going to be the big agent meeting every Friday. Also, be watching your state newsletters and attending your state meetings. I know that we do have an operationalized team that is going to be meeting and pushing things out. If you've got large networks that you would like a guest speaker to, please reach out to Leo or I, and we'll make those arrangements. We'll make sure that somebody is there for you and helping, whether it's a member of the state team, member of leadership, Lauren, myself, you name it. We want to help you be so successful as we take on the next few months together and we adjust to the changing currents and tides.
Absolutely. So, the one thing I keep thinking about is it was perfectly okay to be afraid. We were confused. It was a shock to the system. But today we wake up, we gather all the information, and it's the expert. If you've ever seen me do a keynote, I actually use this analogy a lot because I think it's super important. In today's internet society, which again is a direct parallel to the home buying process, every buyer can find something on the internet and look at the photos, just like I can get on YouTube and decide to train to climb Mount Everest. I can get the diet, I can find the gear, I know what workouts to do, I can look the part. But by the time I'm ready to ascend that mountain, I'm going to hire that local expert who's done it 500 times, who's going to carry my gear, is going to walk me to the path of, if you go left, you will die. If you go right, it's no big deal, right? When a storm is coming, I want that local expert to look and say, you know what? That's no big deal. Let's just set camp. Let's make a fire and wait it out. Or they go, you know what? That's actually a crack in the foundation and you're going to lose a lot of money. Let's back out of this deal and go home. Because I firmly believe that the experts who deliver value and true representation will never go away. So I think with that, we bid you adieu, and we will be talking to you a lot. We will be showing up everywhere. Be omni-channel with us. Read everything we put in Workplace. Please, please, please read all the emails we send you. Show up to your meetings. Show up to your community meetings. We will be everywhere. We are with you.
Absolutely. And we'll see you on the road, the regional rallies. We'll be rolling out information for you there all this next month.